You turn on a race for the first time, and the cars look awesome, the speed is insane, but after 10 laps, you're wondering who's winning? Why did they just change tires again? What's a pit window? Today, I'm going to give you a crash course into racing, Racing 101. You're listening to On Track with Noe. Hey everyone, it's Noe again, and I'm so excited to be back for another episode of On Track with Noe. Today, we're going to go into a crash course of racing, and it's going to be incredible. You know, last week we talked about the growing number of fans, probably some from Drive to Survive, some from the new F1 movie. Maybe some people just turned on the TV and just saw racing, and they're like, this looks awesome. So, this is what this episode is for those of you who are curious and like, how do I start watching racing? I've got you. So, again, today we're going to talk about what to expect when watching a race, what makes each series unique. We're going to cover 3 series, the drivers and teams to follow. I'm going to give you a few suggestions on that, and also how to have fun even when you're still learning about the sport. So, first off, what actually is happening during a race? So, basically, the goal of a race is to complete the distance faster than everyone else. You want to be the first one to the finish line, whether if it's 20 cars, 27 cars, or 40 cars, you want to be that first one to cross the checkered flag. And racing is not just about speed. There's a lot of strategy involved in racing, and there's a lot of pit strategy. In Formula One, there's different tire combinations. IndyCar has different tire combinations too. So it's like, do I put on some of the softer tires? Do I put on some of the harder tires? And kind of go along with that, you know, harder tires will last a little bit longer. Softer tires, they'll wear out faster. So you kind of have to think about, all right, what do I want to trade? Do I want to go fast short term, or do I want to have something left for 20, 30 laps down the line? So that's some interesting strategy. Also, especially in NASCAR, you have a bunch of fuel strategy races that'll come up. A few weeks ago, there was a fuel strategy race at Pocono, and one of the drivers, Chase Briscoe, was able to save enough fuel to make it all the way to the finish and get the win. So he couldn't go 100% all that last run or throughout the entire race. He had to be saving some fuel, saving some gas, and make sure he had enough so that he could finish the race. So there is a lot of strategy involved. Again, there's pit stops. A pit stop is when they'll come in and they'll change tires, they'll make adjustments on the car, they'll fuel the car. If it's IndyCar or NASCAR, Formula One doesn't allow refueling because there was an accident about 15 or 20 years ago where there was a huge fire. So Formula One, basically all the fuel that they have is they got to make it the entire race. Again, there's tire management, like we talked about a few moments ago. You can manage your tires. You can go really fast at the beginning of a run, but you're going to wear them out. Or you can kind of slow down a little bit and have something left for the end of the run and actually go a little bit faster. There's also different tire compounds in IndyCar and Formula One, but don't get too overwhelmed by that just yet. Again, there's clean air, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Why is clean air important? And there's passing zones. There's some areas where it's easier to pass than others. NASCAR, usually you go into the turns, and obviously they have fenders, so you may go up and bump someone and push them out of the way. IndyCar, Formula One, you don't want to do that. You will go flying like a missile, so don't try to push someone using your bumper, I guess, so to say. But an easy way to kind of to start following any racing series, whether it be NASCAR, IndyCar, or Formula One, is to pick 1, 2, maybe even 3 drivers to track, to follow during your first time watching. Also, every racing series will have a little ticker, which is kind of like a scoreboard, shows you where the driver is. and how many seconds they're behind the car in front of them, the leader, so on. They'll have some other information, maybe how much fuel they have left, how much tire wear, how their tire wear looks, and everything. Um, Also, it'll show you maybe how many laps it's been since they've pitted, and also how they move up and down. So you can track them like, oh, like he was fifth place 20 laps ago, and now he's in third. So he's actually making some headway, and so on. Um, and also, what I would recommend too is don't just focus on the leader, because many times in any of these racing series, the leader will pull away by a good amount, and so it could get a little bit boring. But really try to focus in on the other battles that are happening around the track. It's not just the leader. There are battles going on throughout the field, and they are very intense. And sometimes they're more intense in the actual battle for the lead and for the win. So I would recommend just looking for those battles in deeper into the field and just following those. But I mentioned already it's kind of the big three series that a lot of people follow: Formula One, NASCAR, and IndyCar. So I wanted to talk a little bit about each of those series and kind of give you a brief overview. And then maybe in future episodes, we will talk about these series more in depth. But the first one is Formula One. And Formula One is really popular right now. Obviously, the new F1 movie just came out. There's a Netflix series, Drive to Survive. So there's a lot of stuff. A lot of people are becoming fans because of the movie, because of Drive to Survive, and that is fantastic. Because, like I shared in the last episode, it was a racing movie that got me into racing cars. So, um, you know, I'm glad that these are out there and bringing in more fans. But Formula One is often seen as the most elite motorsports category. They have races all over the world. So they'll have races in Europe, they'll have races in Asia, uh, North America, South America, all over the world. And another thing also that's interesting about Formula One is it's very team based. You have 10 teams, and each team has two drivers. Now in 2026, there will be another team added, an 11th team. Cadillac will be joining. But in Formula One, you have teams like Red Bull Racing, you have Ferrari, you have McLaren, you have Aston Martin, you have Kick Sauber, whatever their long name is. You have the Visa Cash App Racing, Bulls. Uh, there's so many teams. Uh, it's really cool because they each have like their own, like their cars look the same, so it's really an easy follow. Um, but I would say maybe kind of a downside to F1 is that there is a lot of team dominance. I know when I first started watching Formula One, it was Red Bull Racing that was dominating. You'd have Max Verstappen and Checo, Sergio Perez. They would win all the races, and so uh, you would have a team. I think it was 2 seasons ago, 2023. Red Bull won every single race of the season except one race. So there's a lot of team dominance. Right now, McLaren is like kind of dominating it, not as much as Red Bull, but they are kind of up there. With Formula One, strategy is huge. You have tire choice. You have a bunch of different compounds for tires. There's also the factors of timing a pit stop. How early do you want to come in? Because if you can come earlier, you can get fresher tires and make up some ground. But then you could also a caution could mess up your race. So that's also a thing. So there's a lot of strategy involved with Formula One. Um, the races are shorter. They're about an hour and a half, so not too much of a time investment. There is a lot of high drama, especially if you follow the racing behind the scenes and some of the team stuff that's going on, some of the driver changes and everything. And of course, there's big personalities, and not just the drivers. A lot of people kind of tend to think of racing just being about the drivers, but there's also the team principals, and they have their interesting um, personalities. You have just other people involved with racing. So that's another thing that makes Formula One, I think, very appealable is you have big personalities, and it's always fun. If you watch Drive to Survive, you're gonna get to know a lot of these, and you will become a fan of these team principals and all that, like Gunther Steiner. Um, IndyCar IndyCar has more closer racing. It's an open wheel series, kind of like the cars look similar to Formula One, but it's not really. They're a spec series, so pretty much all the cars are exactly the same. You have two manufacturers, Honda and Chevrolet. Again, closer racing, you have more variety in the racing. You have street circuits, you have oval tracks, you have road courses. So you have a kind of a mix of everything, and that's something that Formula One doesn't do, is that they don't have oval tracks. Drivers are also more accessible and relatable, I feel like. So we'll talk about that more in another episode. But keep that in the back of your mind. And also, some of the races are more unpredictable unless you're watching in 2025, and then you have Alex Palou that's like dominating everything. But really, since I've been watching IndyCar, it's like really a lot more people have a chance of winning. So that's kind of a little overview of IndyCar. We're going to do a whole episode on that, so you'll want to stay tuned for that. NASCAR is a bunch of stock cars. Basically, they kind of look like the cars that you drive on the road. There's a lot of contact, there's the bump and run, all that. The races are longer. Sometimes they can stretch on 3.5 to 4 hours. So that's a pretty big time commitment if you're interested in that. But they do have a bunch of stuff like drafting. So at the bigger tracks, they'll kind of be all in a pack. You'll have a bunch of restarts, and those restarts can get crazy. There's also this thing called stage racing, where basically NASCAR has their races split up into 3 parts. And so they'll like stop the race at this lap and give out points, and they'll stop the race at this other lap and give out points, and then they'll go to the finish. So it's a little bit more, there's a lot more with NASCAR, I think. There's also a big fan culture. It's more American, and so I think it's gotten the stereotype of being a redneck, but it really is a fun watch. And that's actually the first series that I started watching was NASCAR after watching the Cars movies and everything. So how did I get into all these series? Because these are all 3 series I watch, and I know there's many other racing series, and hopefully this podcast opens up opportunities to get to explore these other series like IMSA and maybe some dirt track and all that. So I would love to explore those because I really don't know a lot about those. But my first time watching these series, so F1 I started watching in 2022. Actually, a friend invited me to come watch a race, and I was like, well, I've never watched Formula One. I guess I'll give it a shot. And I immediately started pulling for McLaren because in IndyCar, I was an big Aero McLaren fan, Pato Award. So I was like, I'll just tend to pull for McLaren. And so I've really enjoyed it. It's the way I like to think about it, it's like a science project almost. Where the teams build a car before the season, and those who build the best car are going to perform the best. Like this season, McLaren, they have done an outstanding job, and they are on track to win the Constructors' Championship and the Drivers' Championship. IndyCar, I actually started watching IndyCar casually in 2008. I would watch the Indy 500, and that's pretty much all I would watch. And it wasn't until 2018 when I really went all into IndyCar. And again, I'm going to share a little bit more of that story in a future episode. NASCAR, like I said, was my first series that I started watching. I started watching in 2007. And so that was a fun series to watch. Still love to watch it, even though it has changed a lot since I first started watching in 2007. I think it's still pretty enjoyable. So really quick, you're going to hear some of these words referenced in these racing. And so I want to kind of give you some key terms, so to say, for racing. So you're probably going to hear pole position. What is pole position? Basically, that means that you are starting the race in first place. And so if you hear Lando Norris is on the pole, that means Lando's going to start first. DRS, that's an F1 term. So DRS stands for drag reduction system. Basically, it's a wing on the back of the car that will open up, a little flap on the wing that opens up and allows the cars to gain a little bit more speed on the straightaways. And so basically when the flap opens up, less air is pushing on the wing, so it makes the car go faster. So they can use that in designated areas in Formula One. IndyCar has something similar, but not really. It's actually called push to pass. So IndyCar has a little button on the steering wheel, and they get a boost of a few seconds that they can use. They have usually from like maybe 90 to 120 seconds, and they can use it whenever they want to on the track during the race, but you only have those certain amount of seconds. If you use more push to pass, or if you use it all, that's it. You don't have any more. So that's kind of a way to kind of help drivers pass each other on the track. Dirty air and clean air. So dirty air is basically when you get behind a car and it affects the aerodynamics, and you may not be able to pass. You may not be able to get directly like super behind a car to give them a nudge. Um, so dirty air is not good. What is good is clean air. Clean air allows you to get a run, make a pass, all that. I said dirty air wasn't good. It's good if you're the leader because you can dump a bunch of dirty air onto the people behind you and keep them from passing you. You also have the overcut and undercut. So this refers to kind of the pit stops, the pit cycles. So again, like I mentioned earlier, if you pit earlier, you could actually make up time on the leaders. But if a caution comes out or something was to happen, your race is ruined. Also, with if you wait too long, you may lose a lot of time on the track and you may actually lose positions when you come out of the pits. So that's kind of what the overcut and undercut is. You're going to see green flag a lot. Green flag, just like when you're on the road, means go. Or in F1, you have the lights that go out. That means go. Yellow flag means that there's something hazardous on the track and they got to have the cars go on a slower pace. So that way the safety people can take care of the car that's wrecked or any debris that may be on the track. If you see a red flag, that means something a little bit more serious has come out. And so they need to stop the race and take care of that situation. Checkered flag means the race is over and the winner has crossed the finish line. In NASCAR, you'll hear something called overtime or green, white, checkered. And basically, it is what it sounds like. If a NASCAR race, if they run out of laps and the caution is still on, NASCAR will give the drivers another shot to go for the win. They'll, in what they call a green, white, checkered, basically they'll restart the race with 2 laps to go. They'll throw the green flag. When they come back around, they'll throw the white flag, which means the final lap, and then they'll come back around and get the checkered flag. And they have unlimited attempts to do that. So sometimes they can get a little wacky. Another term, 2 more terms I want to talk about is oversteer and understeer. So oversteer is when the car turns too easily and you want to spin out. A lot of drivers drivers would prefer this, maybe, I would say, but you got to have good car control. Understeer is when the car, you're turning the wheel, the car wants to go straight. So that's not good when you're trying to turn and the car is trying to go straight. So, like I said, I think a lot of drivers would rather have a car that oversteers, a car that's loose, rather than a car that understeers and is tight. So, you know about racing a little bit now, but who are some of the stars of these series? So, Formula One. Formula One, here's some starter picks if you were a new fan and want to get into some of these series. So Formula One, you have Lewis Hamilton. He is a 7-time champion. He drives for Ferrari. He used to drive for Mercedes. And he is one of the greatest racing drivers in the world, has over 100 wins. You also have Max Verstappen. He is a champion, 4-time champion. And he drives for Red Bull Racing. Red Bull has been very dominant over the last few years. I think Max Verstappen is going to be a Mercedes driver sooner rather than later. Max Verstappen wants to win, and I know Mercedes has an incredible track record of winning. They dominated the 2010s. So I think Max is going to go wherever he has the best chance of winning. So I think we're going to see Max in a black and turquoise uniform pretty soon. You also have Lando Norris. He drives for McLaren. He's very funny, he's likable, and he's really fast. You also have another Ferrari driver, Charles Leclerc. He's very fast, and he's also a musician. He's actually got some stuff on Spotify. So, maybe you want to pull for him just because you also like music. Again, making a personal connection. Oscar Piastri, he's up and coming, and he may be this year's Formula One world champion. Who knows? So that's a little bit of F1, but now IndyCar. Here's some drivers. IndyCar has some incredible personalities. You have Joseph Newgarden. He's very cool. He's consistent. He's a champion. He's easy to root for. He's such a fan-friendly driver. He's amazing. You also have from Monterrey, Mexico, you have Pato O'Ward. And this guy, just look him up on social media. This guy is all over the place, and he has an amazing personality, and he's a fan favorite. He's IndyCar's most popular driver. You also have drivers like Alex Palou. If you want to root for somebody who wins a lot, root for Alex Palou. He's very calm, he's calculated, and he's dominant. He actually kind of reminds me of Alain Prost from Formula One back in the 80s and early 90s. Also, another driver from IndyCar you may want to root for is Colton Herta. He's young, he's very fast, he's relentless. He just needs to work on some things, and I think he can be an IndyCar champion very, very soon. NASCAR. Let's talk about NASCAR, some of the drivers and some of the big stars. So we have Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott is the most popular driver in the series. He's a pretty clean racer, I would say, and he's just very quiet, doesn't say a lot. But he's won, he's a champion, so there's that for him. Kyle Larson, there's a debate on whether Kyle Larson is the greatest driver on the planet right now, and I think he ruffled some feathers last year when he said that he was even better than Max Verstappen. That was an interesting statement, but I will say Kyle Larson has incredible talent. He wins in every car he gets in. He's like driving. It seems like every night he's driving something and he's winning on some dirt tracks, some wherever he may be. Like, he is always a threat to win, and he's really good. He dipped his toes in the IndyCar. That didn't go too well. I think the weather may have impacted that a little bit, but I think if he had more time to adapt to an IndyCar, I think he would do a lot better. Denny Hamlin, he's a veteran. He's outspoken. He's never won a championship, but this may be the year. So if you're looking for somebody, maybe he's won more than 60 races, and he's been here for a long time. He's been very successful, but he's never gotten that championship. So maybe that's kind of an underdog. If you want to root for a championship underdog driver, there you go. Denny Hamlin may be someone to look for. And then we have Ross Chastain. He's aggressive, and he is unpredictable. He's like a pinball sometimes, but I love him. One of his celebrations that he does when he wins a race is he will smash a watermelon. So that's always fun. I say all that to say, I just gave you these lists of drivers, but there's no wrong reason to pick a driver. Maybe you want to pull for a driver because they're funny. Maybe they're fast. Or maybe you just like their helmet design. Or maybe you just like their name, like Stingray Robb in IndyCar. That's his real name, by the way. So just throwing that out there. So now you know some of the drivers, some of the terminology, some about each of the series. Where can I start watching this? So F1, you can see it on ESPN or F1 TV. IndyCar is on Fox or IndyCar Live if you're international. NASCAR, they're all over the place right now. They're currently on TNT, and they'll finish off the season on NBC, but they also, at the beginning of the season, they'll have races on Fox and Amazon Prime. When to watch F1 races usually are very early Sunday morning. So for us Americans, we got to get up early to watch an F1 race. IndyCar and NASCAR mostly on Sunday afternoons. So let me give you some last tips before we close out this episode on just how to get a better, more enjoyable, experience when watching racing. Watch with a second screen. Maybe you have an app for F1 or IndyCar or NASCAR, or follow along with it on Twitter, or I guess it's called X now, or on social media. That's a good way to keep up with the race. Also, follow these drivers and teams on social media. They do a lot of behind-the-scenes content, and you really get to know these drivers and their personalities. Like we talked about earlier, Pato, he has an incredible personality. He's a great follow on social media. Also, try watching practice and qualifying and get to learn some of the names, some of the teams before race day. So those are some quick little tips to help make your race viewing experience more better. So again, you don't have to understand every rule to be a fan of racing. You just have to start watching. Ask questions, find your driver, and the rest will come naturally, and you'll be hooked for life. So that's a little intro into racing. Next week, we're going to actually dive more into one of these series, IndyCar. So stay tuned for that. I think it's an underrated series that a lot of people are sleeping on, and it is a fantastic series to follow. So we're going to talk about that next time. But this is it for Racing 101 and Episode 2 of On Track with Noe. See y'all later.